Well, anyway, Father John Bartnowski, after the church was completed and the bishop come to consecrate the new church, he came to Kenai, and there was two deacons traveling with him. One of them was Father Shadura. He wasn't a priest yet. After this church was consecrated, during the same divine liturgy, Father Paul Shadura, he was ordained, and he was assigned to the Kenai church. And he stayed here in Kenai for 47 years. And he serviced Kenai, Ninilchik, Saldovia, Tyonek, Susitna, Kanik, and Anchorage. He done that all once a year in the fall time. He took care of those people there. So when he moved away on account of his health, I forgot the year, but our Bishop Ambrosi, no, Bishop John, I think. Yeah, Bishop John, he wrote to us, to the sisterhood of the church, and he told us it would be a great occasion for Kenai if we got busy and had a nice reception for this new priest. That's the time Father Nicholas Mooning was ordained. Kenai church is vacant, so he was assigned to Kenai, but he didn't serve us. Because Father Mooning, he was 76 years old, and to travel was too much for him. So we got along somehow by ourselves until Father Cyril came here. And for a while it was nice to have a priest again. Well, I don't know what else I can tell you. You have anything to say? Yeah, my grandfather, Charles Hornsky, he was interested in hunting. That's what he done. He used to go sea otter hunting to the Aleutian Islands. And in those days, boys, when they were 11, 12, well, they were men. They had their own guns, not guns, but weapons. Well, I think they had guns too. And they went. So my father used to go with my grandfather on these sea otter hunts. They used to have maybe 14 or 15 boats. These boats are canoes. I don't know if they're canoes, but anyway, they're sea-going skin boats. And they have double keel, so they can take the rough water and stuff. And if they got caught in rough weather on the way, like in the Gulf, well, they would lash all their body, they used to call them body, together. Lash them all together and cover up. They had holes. A lot of them would go inside the hole and then cover up the boat, and they might have one or two out on the lookout, watch out. And that way they would sleep or sit out the storm. Anyway, that's the way, that's what I heard about my grandpa. it was nothing for them to go someplace down to southeastern Alaska along the coast of the lower 48, because my great-grandfather, Californsky, he went down to California, and that's how we got that name. That's the only way I can figure it. You know, you was named for something, for an area or anything. That's why we have that ski on the end. The Russians dubbed him, I think, Harnsky. Oh, I don't know. If I knew I was going to be standing up here talking to you, I would have prepared something. But I think I'll let the students here take over and see what they can tell you.
First of all, I'm from the Kenai area, and really all I know about KNA is I've lived half of my life in the States, and I just want to give you my point of view of the program I'm in and some of the things that KNA is doing for me personally and the rest of the people. Well, I graduated from Kenai Central High School. I really never had any plans of going to school, or I never thought of what I was going to do in the future. But in this program, I've had a fairly good background in accounting, some business law, and this and that. And it's helped me. I plan to go on to school. It's got programs like the Controlled Environmental Agriculture. That's really new in Alaska, in most states of the United States. And if we really make KNA work, it'll benefit Alaska, the natives, and everyone else. And I just pray to God it does work the way we figure it will.
I'm Thomas Tolan, and I'm from the Nushagak area, and somehow Nushagak and Kenai here is related. In the book there that you all have, you'll see that a Father Nicholas traveled over into the Nushagak area in the 19th century. So we are related somehow, and I'm just going to school out here in KNA here, taking advantage of the course they're offering, the business management course. And so far I've enjoyed it, and I think it's benefiting a lot of Alaska natives. So far that I know, since we've been started this course, 2 or more of the class members have gone on to a further education, went on to college, and like Tom says, he plans on going on, and so do I. I'm not very much of a speech giver, so goodbye.
Tom, come back here. Tom Stroman. You mentioned some of the things that plans for KNA in the future. Do you know some of the plans for the Kenai Native Association in the future? I really think that people would like to know, you know, you can think of things that, or if the audience, people out in from KNA who are here, if you just tell us some of your plans.
Well, quite a few of the programs that KNA has is mostly educational. They have marine fisheries, business management, pilot ground school, a number of others that right now, looking at all these faces, I can't think too good. But I think that's one step. We got to get the education and the facilities first, and that's what we're working for. And we need help. Mrs. Farnsworth could tell you more about the educational programs. Excuse me.
Thank you very much, Tom. Well, is there anyone else from out KNA or Wildwood who would like to add to what Tom said? Or do any of you have questions to ask these people? One interesting thing going on out there is the environmental agricultural program. It's part of the university program, though, but it might feed Alaska one of these days. And maybe Mrs. Farnsworth can say a little bit about that.
Thank you, Peggy. I feel that I can tell you a little bit about the Kenai Native Association. I've been out there for 2 years now teaching the business management program. And I've had passed through my class in that time about 75 students. In the beginning, Kenai Native Association had quite a program going, which was under the Indian Action Program that was financed by the BIA. They did have a pilot's training program. They had carpenter training. They had heavy-duty equipment training. They had a mechanics program and the business management. Now we're down to just the business management and the fisheries program. And they're hoping for funding starting January 1 again. But whether it'll be a reality or not, we don't know. The Kenai Native Association is trying to get businesses at Wildwood to keep them going. They are furnishing housing now, not just to the natives, but to anybody that wants to come out there and rent. They do have the boarding home program, which includes students that do come to the Kenai Central High School, to the Kenai Junior High, and to the elementary schools. These students are from all over Alaska, and again, it's a BIA-financed and state-financed program. They have housing for those students out there. They do have counselors for them out there. They have all sorts of programs for them out there, and especially with the new Indian Act that came through, they have received quite a bit more funding, which has also trickled down to the Kenai Central High School in the way of tutors and aides to these Native children that do need help in the school because they haven't received the education that our students have. The Kenai Native Association also has the CEA project, which is a controlled environmental agricultural project, which is quite an undertaking. And they're using one of the buildings out at Wildwood that was used as a communication center that was controlled as far as the environment was concerned in that building, and they're putting this to use. The funds came for that from the federal government and from General Electric, and they're working on this together. And we have the University of Alaska also that is working with them in this project. They are selling vegetables from there now in the way of tomatoes and lettuce and cucumbers, and it's the first time I've had tomatoes that have been grown in a hothouse that tasted like fresh garden tomatoes. Truly are good, and I think that you probably have been able to buy them in some of the markets locally. KNA in their fisheries program do have 2 boats. One is a large fishing boat that they use to train the students on, and they also have a crane barge that they have been working on where the students can get training. They are working now to come about with some pipeline contracts, which would provide employment for the Kenai natives. And they are also working on services. They are trying to start a grocery store out there which would service people in that area and others that want to go there. And they are also trying to come up with some other services for their people. So on the whole, they really are progressing. The land that the Kenai Native Association has is the land that they received, part of the land that they're entitled to under the Native Land Claims Settlement Act. This is another area that we touch upon in the business management class is the native land claims. And part of the training the fishery students receive also is record keeping. And so they come to my class to receive some training for this. One of the things I try to discuss with them is the native land claims to let them know what it's all about and what they're receiving under it. And the last session that we had here a couple of weeks ago, the students said, well, how come we didn't know anything about this? And I said, well, how come you didn't try to find out something about the native land claims? But the thing is that there is no way for them to find out about it unless they can attend some sort of a class. And there aren't many people that know about the native land claims because it's so new. but the information does have to get to them, and training programs is one of the ways that it can get to them. So all in all, I think the Kenai Native Association is really and truly working for their natives and helping them out.
I think the Mayor's Bicentennial Committee will be contacting you. We had that idea of tracing, like the Shadura family, the Wilson family, and the Ivanoff family. So it's good information to know. Is there anyone else who would like to add anything about KNA, what it's doing, how you feel? We have some time before it is time to go to lunch. There's one. Oh, Sister Victoria. This is Sister Victoria of St. Herman's Pastoral School. She's now at Kodiak.
This opportunity should be passed up without mentioning the fact that it was the Kenai Native Association which gave the start to St. Herman's Pastoral School in February of 1973. Since 1917, the Russian Orthodox Church here in Alaska has had no schools. In that year, funding was completely cut off because of the revolution in Russia, and the church in all of North America found itself, well, penniless. During all of these years, there's been a great need for training Alaskans for the more than 80 churches and Orthodox communities in the state. We were obliged to send Native Alaskans to the lower 48 in recent years, when at last the church in that part of the states was able to organize some schools. But we needed education here for Native Alaskans who would be leaders in the Russian Orthodox Church here. We had a church meeting in 1973 that decided to found such a school. But we had no funds, we had no teachers, and we had no place. Probably because of the intercessions of our father, St. Herman of Alaska, to whom we dedicated our school. We were very fortunate in finding teachers in a very short time. Funding came miraculously, a good part of it from the BIA through scholarship aid. But all of that would have come to nothing if it wasn't for the Kenai Native Association and the help of George Miller, who offered us facilities at Wildwood Station, which we were able to occupy for a year and a half. We weren't able to continue at Wildwood, but in any case, if that had not been offered to us in the nick of time, we would have no St. Herman's Pastoral School today. The school has now relocated in Kodiak and continues there to train readers, deacons, and priests for the church in Alaska, and to carry on all sorts of other work, some of which I think I may have mentioned in some footnotes in the paper. But I wanted to mention this one thing about KNA at this time. Thank you.
We'll start the afternoon session a wee bit late, beginning with the usual never-ending announcements. If you haven't signed the register, be sure to do so. We want this for historical purposes also. The fact that you were here is important. Those of you who wanted forms for the college credit, they are over here on this podium. And if you need help filling them out, I think Mrs. Willis would be glad to help you. She's going to be in charge, and so she would be the one more likely to help you fill out the form. Again, the Russian Orthodox Church will be open this afternoon after the session, and so will the museum. Sylvia is offering her, not her, but the senior citizen bus. She is chauffeuring it. For those of you who might be interested in going down with her in this big yellow senior citizen bus, it's local. We'd like to get a note on how many people are here from geographic areas. I recognize My friend Donna here is from Seward. Are there any others here from Seward, Donna? We got 2. Any others here from Seward? Stand up and be counted. Is there anyone here from Homer? 1, 2, 3. At least Homer's recognized, Seward's recognized. I know Ninilchik people are here. Anchorage people are here. Kenai people are here. North Kenai, Soldotna. What about another geographic area? Anyone from another place? Clam Gulch. So, all right, let's hear from you. Where are you from? Oh, Clam Gulch. My goodness, there's a whole great big bunch of you. And one from Kasilof and another one from Kasilof. That's just great. What? Clam Gulch? Tyonek. Very good. That just really pleases me. All right, let's hear. Where from? Kodiak. Oh. Dr. Morgan Sherwood is marking up 1 for Halibut Cove. Right on. With beginning our afternoon experience, or just before we begin. Hi, are any of you from any special area? Anchorage? And where? And the University of Alaska. We just have 3 more people coming in. It's just really wonderful. If you haven't noticed already, in your book, the conference booklet is a schedule of what is happening at our conference. And for, again, historical purposes, so that you could look back in some years later, it might be well if you corrected who spoke when. For instance, Dr. Frederick spoke, Mary Nyson and Tom Stroman and Tom Stidwell. Can never get his name correct. But anyway, I think these people should be given recognition. So if you would correct your book, I think you would find it of value in the future. Alan Boris is in charge of the Native experience. Alan is a teacher at the Kenai Peninsula College. Alan.
Teaching at the college, I'm used to considerably smaller groups. This thing on? First of all, I would like to establish an air of informality about this afternoon's proceedings. The resource book that each of you have presents certain aspects of the Native experience or Native history in a rather formal way. If you wish a formal discussion of events of Native history, that is where you should turn. But I think much more can be accomplished this afternoon if we keep this symposium informal. Much of the history of the Kenai Peninsula has not been written down. It remains as a memory, an isolated fact, an anecdote in the back of someone's mind. I suspect there is enough of this memory history in this room to fill several volumes. Surely at least one of these volumes could deal with Native history. So I invite you to be generous with your comments and be generous with your questions. On your program, there is a time set aside for a panel discussion. I think rather, because of the time factor, rather I would invite you to ask questions at any time during the talks or between the talks also. In these opening remarks, I'm not going to go through a lot of lengthy definitions. You didn't come here to be bored. But I think one term needs to be defined. This topic is the Native experience or Native history. We have to establish just what we mean by the term Native. Now, on the surface, this does not seem to be too difficult a thing to do. But when you realize there are residents of the Kenai Peninsula who are both Native and of Russian heritage and who are presently Americans, the question becomes a little more complex. Now, I've always thought it somewhat presumptuous of anthropologists, sociologists, politicians, educators, and such to have to define what a native is, so I'm not going to concoct a definition of my own. Rather, I'm going to go by a definition that was given me by a native student at the college. A native, I was told, is anyone who other natives say is a native. That was my first reaction, too, but the more I thought about it, the more right it sounded. This is how it should be defined, I think. Now, this is a history conference. We probably could give this a little more historical perspective. We will say a native is anyone who other natives say is a native and who can trace his biological or cultural heritage back to prehistoric or pre-Russian times. We cannot hope to cover all aspects of native history in 3 hours this afternoon. Some selection had to be made. The people, and hence the topics you will hear from today, were not selected simply by chance or for convenience or because they happen to be friends of mine, but rather because each has recently been involved in some type of research that has a bearing on native history. For those of you who have been actively following the history of this area, I hope they will give you fresh insights. For those of you whose interest is more casual, I think they can give you accurate, concise information. You will also note that none of these people are historians per se. 2 are archaeologists, 3 are linguists or have been involved in language studies. History, the record of human events, can be approached in many different ways from many different points of view. Each has its own value and each has its own contribution. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. This afternoon we will begin with a very down-to-earth subject, archaeology. I'm glad somebody's listening. That's good. Okay. Dr. William Workman from Alaska Methodist University. He is Associate Professor of Anthropology. He has done quite a bit of work in northern archaeology, working in the Yukon. He's also done, of interest to us here, quite a bit of work in the Kachemak Bay area. His topic is the prehistory of the Southern Peninsula.
Thank you, Ellen. It's obviously a relatively presumptuous title, which I don't propose to try and run under. Well, as Ellen was saying in the introduction, there's a article in the booklet you were given in which I attempted a very sketchy summary of what we like to think we know about the topic we're going to discuss this afternoon, and people who are really interested can look at that later if they haven't had a chance to look at it already. When we talk about the southern Kenai Peninsula for practical purposes at the moment, we're dealing with Kachemak Bay. There's some other geographical territory, obviously, that legitimately can be included here, but the reason we're confined to Kachemak Bay is that's the one area at the moment we have any archaeological information from. Professor Sherwood this morning mentioned the pioneer work of Frederica de Laguna, done now almost 40 years ago in this area. Her publication, which unfortunately is very difficult to obtain, The Archaeology of Cook Inlet, has weathered, I think, very, very well over the years. There have been some changes necessary, but essentially her outline periodization of several phases of Pacific Eskimo culture have held up pretty well. It's kind of a paradox when you talk about a local area like Kachemak Bay that in one way of looking at it, it's one of the better known areas in Alaska, which shows, among other things, how much more we have to find out. We have De Laguna's one publication in archaeology done 40 years ago, some more recent survey work, and then in part Cornelius Osgood's ethnography of the Tenaina, which includes some discussion of Kachemak Bay, Tenaina as well as others.